Wanderer will be back in a few days with his first rerun banner, and you're probably having a hard time deciding which teams you want to use him in. Because, well, he has many teams. And I will try to go over all of them, giving you the character substitutes you can use and any important things you should know. There are a few characters which work very well with Wanderer, such as Bennett, Faruzan, and quite a few shield characters. I don't need to explain Bennett, but Faruzan works very well with Wanderer if she's C6. Faruzan at C6 is so good, but if you don't have C6, she can be very annoying to use. I would even prefer not using Faruzan if she's not C6, and instead using the other teams. But if you do have C6, I highly recommend pairing them together. While the shield characters, well, Wanderer is kind of a glass cannon and can be very annoying to use just because of the interruption and how he can get interrupted so easily. So someone like Thoma, someone I really like to use with Wanderer. Then there's also Zhongli, then Diona, Layla, to name a few. Let's start with the Wanderer Hypercarry teams. I call it a Hypercarry, but the name could very easily be changed depending on the supports you use in your team. These teams basically have Wanderer and 3 support characters to buff him. There are quite a few which have been listed, so you can interchangeably use them depending on the ones you have. Some of course will work better than the others. So Jean, Yunjin, Layla, Diona, Candice, and Thoma. Some examples for using these characters is for example Wanderer, Faruzan, Yunjin, and Bennett. Then Wanderer, Faruzan, Jean, and Bennett. This team is also called a Sunfire. You want to make teams which have a shield because, as I said before, Wanderer really needs them. A brief explanation on the characters themselves. First of all, Jean, because of her C2 and C4, which can really increase Wanderer's damage if you have it. So you can use her if you have her C2 and C4. Then Yunjin, her C6 will increase his attack speed, which will be a lot better because Wanderer does normal attacks and charge attacks, so the faster he is, the more damage he'll do. Then Layla, there are actually 2 reasons for Layla. First of all, she has a shield, which is a really important thing for Wanderer. And next, she actually can provide you with Cryo. Now, Cryo will give Wanderer 20% more crit rate, which is a huge buff. And that's why Cryo teammates are very good. Then Diona, same thing like Layla, she provides you with heals, shields, and a little bit of Cryo application. It can be a bit difficult to get the cryo absorb, so you need to try out your rotations depending on the team you're using. And next, Thoma, because of the huge shield he gives you and the pyro application, and if you're using Bennett, you can go for the double pyro resonance. Then next, the reason why Candice is over there is because she's actually not that bad in terms of using her with Wanderer. First of all, her burst will apply a Hydro on you, so you can absorb the Hydro. The Hydro perk is not super amazing like the crit rate or the attack damage, but it's still pretty good. It will give you more damage, and Candice herself can give Wanderer damage bonus through her passive, so that's another thing to look out for when you're using Candice. You can even make up a free team, Candice and another cryo character, and use it with Wanderer. Next up are Wanderer free teams, which are actually pretty good and provide you with a lot of choices. They start off with Wanderer, then a Hydra character, a cryo character, and a flex. The flex can be someone like Faruzan, which is what I recommend, or you could have Bennett, Mona, Kazuha, or another cryo or Hydra character. In the Hydro and cryo characters place, there are quite a few choices and each character has their own pros and cons. What I really like to use is Kokomi and Ganyu and Kazuha. This team covers almost everything. First of all, you have the huge cryo AoE from Ganyu, then Kokomi gives you healing, and finally Kazuha for the crowd control. You actually don't really need to use shields for free teams because, well, the enemies will be frozen, so they can't really attack you. Of course, some enemies will be immune to this, but nonetheless, an amazing team. Now for the cryo character, you can use one like Layla, Ganyu, Rosaria, Diona, Mika also. Of course, some will perform better than the other, and the same goes for Hydro. You can use Sincho, Yalan, Mona, Kokomi. They're all pretty good. But depending on the characters you're using for each team, the team rotations first of all will change, and will also change the flex character you're using. Because, well, if for example you're using a cryo character that's not good with cryo application, you may want to have another cryo character with you to help you out. So let me just give a few pros and cons for the Hydra characters. So Kokomi, she has great Hydro application, but then the only disadvantage that Kokomi has is the fact that her Hydro application is only for a specified area, and if Wanderer leaves that area, which is a issue with Wanderer because it's the same thing you probably noticed with Bennett. So it's the same thing with Kokomi, but it can be solved. Like for example, the team I'm using, I'm using Kazuha to swirl and bring enemies together. You can also use Venti to fix that issue. So there's a few things you can do if you're using Kokomi. Then Sincho, Honestly, one of the best characters used with Wanderer because of the rain swords. They're gonna follow you around wherever you go, so you're never gonna be facing the same issue as Kokomi, and a lot of damage, of course, because Sincho is really good. Yelan, same thing, similar to the rain swords, but then this time you don't have the damage absorption that Sincho gives, so that's one disadvantage, but still, they're both really good. Mona isn't really that amazing at Hydro application, so I wouldn't really recommend her, but you can use her as a flex, which is I think a better role for Mona because of her Omen, and she would increase Wanderer's damage in that way. Then for the Cryo characters, well, Ganyu, as you all know, she's amazing with her Cryo application, so I don't really need to explain her. But then Layla, so Layla can give you shields, which is one thing that the others don't really have, except Diona, which can be useful because, well, again, I'm saying this the 5th time, I guess, that Wanderer really needs his shields. And then next you have Rosaria. Rosaria can be really good. First of all, she gives you a lot of crit rate because of her talents. First of all, you're already giving Wanderer Cryo, so he can absorb Cryo and then, have 20% more crit rate. And if you can do even more with Rosaria, that's a lot of crit rate on Wanderer. And if you can do maybe Cryo Resonance, that's an insane amount of crit rate, and you can just completely focus on crit damage and make Wanderer really, really strong. That's something I want to try in the future, but for now, I'm just going to stick to my current team. And then next, Diona, as I said before, shields, heals, really good, can be used in this team. Then Mika, the reason why Mika is here is the same way how Yunjin can increase Wanderer's attack speed. Mika can do that as well, and so he can also be used in this place. Next up is the Wanderer Vaporize team, also known as Wanderer National, has Wanderer, Zhangling, Xingqiu, and Bennett. A very, very strong team with every character being only 4-star but performs very well. Though it has no shield, Xingqiu's skill does help a little with the interruption but doesn't make him immune to it. You can, I guess, use Yelan instead of Xingqiu, but as I said, you'll lose out on the interruption resistance. Next is Wanderer's double elemental teams. So basically you have Wanderer and 2 characters of the same element and a flex. So something like double Pyro with Wanderer, Faruzan, Zhangling, and Bennett. Or for double Hydro, you have Xingqiu and Yelan. For double Geo, you have Zhongli and Albedo. Now, though I think Faruzan is the best choice for the flex, I've seen people use Kazuha for the crowd control and also the Veritas Inventor. Even Jean or Venti, Yunjin also, Zhongli, and even Mika sometimes. They'll work, but some work better for certain teams. You can change your flex character depending on the double whatever you're using. Another team type that's similar to the double elemental teams is one that's basically similar to the Hypercarry teams I mentioned in the beginning, but instead of the flex character being another support, it's actually a sub-DPS. So someone like Xingqiu, Ilan, Zhangdeng, Fischl, Yaimiko, Rosaria, there's a lot. So that's also something you can try. Another really strong team is the Wanderer Triple Anemo team with Bennett. It has a few pros and a few cons. The pros being the fact that now you can use Faruzan even at C0, though of course she's gonna be a bit worse. Her main issue being energy won't be that big of an issue because you have another Anemo character to help with Faruzan energy issues. So you can have someone like Kazuha, Wenti, when Sucrose works, basically to help out with another issue that Wanderer and Faruzan teams have, which is crowd control, because even though they're both Anemo characters, they don't have as good of, crowd control. Faruzan has little bit, but it's not really that good. And then you have Bennett helping out with the healing. Now, of course, this team doesn't have any shields, which could be a problem. Other than that, it's a very good team, and if you have the characters for it, you should try it out. Next up are his driver teams. These are teams where Wanderer is not the main focus, but instead could be replaced by someone else, and usually uses Veritas Inventor, so he acts as the Anemo on-field driver. So for teams for Burgeon, Hyperbloom, Aggravate, Taser, in all of these teams, someone like Sucrose could replace Wanderer, right? But if you wanted to, you could use these teams with Wanderer, and he gives you DPS while being the Anemo driver. Let's start with Hyperbloom teams. Now, I'm not going to go in depth explaining each substitute or whatnot, because in this case, me explaining these teams is basically me explaining every single Hyperbloom, Aggravate, Burgeon team. So basically, think of any Hyperbloom team, and instead of the Anemo character you're already using, you use Wanderer. An example is Wanderer, Xingqiu, Nahida, and Fischl. For Burgeon, it's the same thing. One team I like to use for Burgeon is Wander, Yalan, Nahida, and Toma. Toma, again, being very useful for Burgeon teams. Now for Aggravate, again, the same thing, but this time with double Electro, a Dendro, Wander, so it would be something like Wander, Fischl, Cookie, and Nahida. Then finally for Taser, though I don't like using Taser teams in general, and I don't recommend using them, but if you want, you can still use Wander in them. So something like Wander, Fischl, Beidou, and Sincho. And that's it for the teams. Now, I just want to go over the teams I like to use and other stuff because people ask me to kind of rank teams. Now, I can't really test all the teams, but I can give you my ratings on some of the teams that I really like to use and, recommend using. So here we go. The two teams I really like and I think work the best is the Hypercarry and Freeze team, both of them being very strong. First, let's talk about the Freeze team. First of all, having so many choices, it makes it a lot easier to get a team ready for him. And you don't even have to use Faruzan. You can go without her and the team would still be very strong. Especially with someone like Gwenti or Kazuha, for the crowd control, it makes it a lot of fun to use. Another huge reason why it's so strong is because of its elements themselves. Wander can absorb Cryo and Hydro, Cryo increasing his crit rate, and if you have double Cryo, that's even more crit rate. So building Wander gets easier as you can just focus on the crit damage. That's why I really like this team. Then the Hypercarry team, though I would prefer using the Freeze team more, not because the Hypercarry team is weaker in any way, but because of it being easier to get ready. Now, the Hypercarry team can use up some of your very important characters like Zhongli, Bennett, which most teams use, but ignoring that, if you have the things ready, for Wander, in this team, Wander feels very satisfying to use because of the huge numbers you get from Wander. For Faruzan for the res shred, Bennett for the heals and buff, and finally Zhongli for the shield. These are two teams I use for Wander. Well, I don't have Zhongli, so I don't use him, and instead use C6 Toma, which honestly does pretty good as well. But yeah, these are two of my most favorite teams, and you should probably use them as well. So that's it for this guide. I hope this helped somehow, and if it did, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!